Welcome to Financial Freestyle. I'm Ross Mack, and this is sponsored by Vanguard. Welcome to Financial Freestyle here on Yahoo Finance, and I'm your host, Ross Mack. Now look, no matter where you are on your financial journey, you can always learn more. And that's why I'm talking to some of the most influential people in the world of finances and learning some of their secrets to uncover success. And today's no different, as I'm talking to the mogul Karen Civil, founder of Always Civil Enterprises. Karen, thanks so much for joining us. How you doing today?
I'm so good. Thank you so much for having me on.
So look, I really want to know, what has been your framework for turning cultural capital into like actual financial capital?
So it starts off relatively like with an idea. For instance, someone who I worked with who was great at this, say Nipsey Hussle, his brand, and like All Money In. With someone like him, it'll start off with an idea. For instance, he read this book by Jonah Berger, and he's like, "Listen, I heard Oprah talking about it. I want to implement what he discussed in this book for when I release my mixtape." We did that. So we put out his $100 mixtape following that same implement. You have the option. You can go download it off of iTunes for the standard price. But with his Proud to Pay campaign, this $100 gets you this, all the incentives that come with it. And it was so great. It was innovative. So many people were talking about it at a point. And him doing this brought him all of this additional media value. It brought him conversation. It brought him new business where people so intrigued. You saw the Wendy Williams to the Jay-Z's buying it by the hundreds because they supported the initiative. To then maybe a year later, we saw Eminem follow the same exact blueprint. To now there's so many people out who now continue to follow his thing, who followed his blueprint. And it was something that, from Jonah Berger, started with him, and then his conversation with Ryan Leslie, who had his version of what the Proud to Pay. So to answer your question, it usually starts off with an idea. We figure out how their fans or their consumers are going to take this. And then from there, it's like, okay, we know the consumers are going to love this, your audience and your fan base, but how do we turn this into also a need for people outside of your fan base, for, other brands, consumers, or artists who will be able to then take this same blueprint and market it as their own. So after you're done, making the money that you're making, we can then implement this for another artist and keep going from there. So each situation is different. We tackle it different, but we look at it from so many different point of views because it's bigger than just, the typical return on interest.
That's heavy. That's super heavy,
Yeah.
right? And so look, when we look at kind of your life, right? And I think it's important that we understand you were always kind of ahead of the curve, especially when it came to like digital marketing, right? And so I'm curious, right? How did you identify like the power of storytelling when it came to marketing at such a, at an earlier point in time?
I know what worked in my favor is like I have like ADHD and certain things. It's just at a young age, I realized like, okay, Karen, the way you process and think and story tell is much different than your classmates or your counterparts. So instead of looking at this as a negative, necessarily use it in your favor. So I may process or see things differently in the sense of, for me, I like to tell people I started off with a fan page. I love the Backstreet Boys. And even from then, like when I started that, I looked at it at a time, they didn't have a website. So I said, I want to create a website for them that gives all of the information, has the insight, everything that you possibly want. Like think of a library online. So creating their discovery for them. So for me, that was a way of me positioning my fan site that stood away from the typical, let me put pictures up, let me do this, let me do that. So for me, referencing that was just like how I separated the two. I know it's like I'm giving you the super long jargon, but honestly, it's just my thought process is a little bit different. So when I look at something, I try to also tackle a problem. Yes, this is something I want to do. It's a hobby. It's something I love. Or yes, this will be great when it comes to an artist. But how do we also tackle a problem that we may not know is there, but the consumers might know? And let's do two things at one time.
And like, how did you even get in the industry? And more importantly, how did you continue to find ways to evolve and take things to the next level?
So it started off with a website, then eventually, I did at a time when Donald Trump had the show called Apprentice. Angie Martinez had her own version who was at Hot 97 in New York. So I tried out for that. Unfortunately, I made the top three. She didn't pick me, but Funkmaster Flex did. And even given with that, any other person would have been like, "Oh, you're interning for free. You're this. You didn't win." I'm like, technically, I did. As long as you're getting in the door and you're getting that start, that's all that matters. So Flex was looking for me to do the basics. And I'm like, I want to be so important and ingrained in this show that I want to do more than the basics. I want them to rely on me. So after this internship is over, that this show can't run without me. But at the same time, I also problem solved up there. Flex came on from 7 to 12, right? So the media team and most of the team leaves at 5 p.m. So when Flex has guests, there's nobody updating the Hot 97 website. There's no real content. There's nothing being done. There's no questions. Unless it's a super big artist. Jay-Z's not coming every week. At the time, say like Sierra's on the come up, there would be nobody there to capture the content or do anything and stuff like that. So I bought a digital camera. I said, all right, let me make sure Flex is taken care of there. When guests started to come, I started to look into their fan sites, get better questioning to tailor it around them. So even just starting in that space, like I just made sure I identified what was missing on his show and I became that missing component and just filled that position because I knew they obviously they didn't have financially to bring more people on. So I learned it and did that. So for me, it's just all about that. It's like I'm gonna go into a situation, I'm gonna figure out problem solve. Find something, find the problem, become the solution in everything that I do. So for me, that's just the way I take it on, start from there, started with Flex, continued on from Flex. Wayne became a client, then eventually moving on to Beats by Dre. But it all kind of intersected. The great thing about it is I did not have to use a resume. It was just all by leveraging network. I'm big on listening to Issa Rae said this so eloquently. She said, we're so focused on networking up, we don't network across. So everything I did, I made sure to network across. And as I did that, I got to meet people who helped me continue to elevate my career. So networking across with Mac Made got me to work with Lil Wayne. Networking across with Omar Johnson got me at Beats by Dre. So I did Beats by Dre for 8 years. And then in the midst of that, which was great, and having someone like Omar Johnson, who was the president of marketing, champion you, he said, you know what, start that agency. And I did. So even while I was at Beats, eventually turning Beats to a client from Hillary Clinton to Ben Baller to Mary J. Blige, like the portfolio was extensive, but people knew to come to me like, listen, they started to realize, okay, she's a fixer. I need a better way to communicate with my fans. I have a single coming out, or, I'm working on this tour. It's not just about necessarily selling something. How do I relate and communicate with my fans? So that's relatively what Always Civil is about. Yes, we do branding and marketing, but it's how it all connects.
The strongest thing, well, you said a lot, right? So I got to unpack it,
Yeah.
but I will say one of my favorite lessons that you just said is the fact that it's more important to network across than it is sometimes to network up, right? I remember when I first got
Yeah.
on, Wall Street, my thing was like, oh, I ain't trying to talk to y'all. Let me talk to the boss's boss, right?
Yeah.
But what you realize is that as you trying to ascend up a industry, what you realize is that the people that are your peers at some point they become decision makers. And so a lot of success that I've had is because you treat the people that's your peers with, respect, and you also trying to help open doors for them. And then one day, now that you in your, late 20s, early 30s, guess what? Now they're decision makers. And so to your point, oh, Mac Main, now you a decision maker, let's do this. Or Omar, oh yeah, now let's do
Yeah.
this beat deal. But that's real important, man. To anybody at the crib that's listening, network across. That's one of the greatest lessons that I've learned. And then I love what you were saying when you started out with Funkmaster Flex. Sometimes you got to fill a
Yeah.
void and then make it expendable.
Yeah.
And obviously you carry that to everything. But you obviously touched on Wayne, so we got to talk about Wayne, right? Obviously you
Yeah.
helped secure his Global Impact Award, right?
Yeah.
How would you say your business really helped amplify his brand and influence? But like by working with
The great thing with Wayne is he has the most amazing people in his corner in working with him. So from a management early on, the fact that he had Cortez Bryant. So when I was at Beats by Dre, he had Cortez, G. Robinson, the Mac Mains, and things like that. So being able that networking across again, being able to reach out to Mac, who went from vice president to management to president of the label, saying, hey, these ideas, these synergies, I can go directly to him. So when Wayne was unfortunately incarcerated in 2010. Mac is, hey, Karen, we got to figure this out. We have a rock album. We need to find a way to promote Wayne. And it started from there, relatively, but it really is just brainstorming ideas. Him and his team will have a lot of great ideas. I'll just take them, implementing to making them bigger. And then the great thing is like, he's very brand, um, and commercial friendly, where I'll have an idea and I'll send it to Mac or I would send it to him and he'd be like, yeah, let's go, and we'd find ways the most amazing thing about him is he lives in so many different buckets. So you can see him bring out players on the field, then you can see him at WWE, but then you can see him skating like at a skate park, because that's just a duality of him as an individual. So that made it easy to brand him.
Mhm.
You just got to bring their hobbies in. And with him, it worked
Mhm.
perfectly.
That's strong. Look, guys, we got to take a quick commercial break, but when we back, we got more with the mogul, Karen Civil. All right, welcome back to Financial Freestyle. And look, we're getting right back in talking to Karen. So, Karen, obviously, you've seen the industry from kind of the earlier stages. And obviously, you still look like you in your 20s, so I ain't dating you. I mean, but you've seen the music industry really shift, especially now with streaming and now TikTok, and now really how music is actually consumed. But from a marketing standpoint, kind of how would you say, strategies and other brands effectively have had to adapt to kind of the new way music is consumed?
Oh, this streaming era is so different. You know, um, Everything is very fast. It's right there on your phone. So with record labels, companies, streaming services, just things, they now have to be innovative in how they do it. You can't just say, hey, go do a quick dance on TikTok, because everyone's dancing, everyone's on there. But now just how the music comes to you, how it's presented, how it's like it can drop on Tuesday. We're talking about something else on Thursday. Just because everything is just now such a quick turnaround, you have to take that into consideration on how you market your music and to make it relatable and stay. A case study of somebody who I love a lot, who's great at this, is Tyler, the Creator. He dropped an album, what, a year, 2 years ago, and he's still touring and working that. He's still taking that project and working it like he dropped this project in the streaming era, but he's pushing it like old school, like I put out this album like in 1997. I'm going to the radio. I'm doing the thing. I'm taking my time. I'm tweeting about it. I'm this, I'm that. This whole thing where I feel like a lot of artists are doing this thing where they're too cool, mysterious. I'm going to post about it once and go away. No, you can't rely on other platforms to push your quote unquote your agenda or your music for you. So you just have to find those ways. And that's why I loved working with somebody like a Nipsey Hussle, because he got it early with the Proud to Pay campaign. And we're watching an innovativeness of that. So we're watching now different talent do different things to get their audience engaged, because this streaming era is just making everything so fast to consume and straight in your face that it's very forgettable.
I love it, man. So look, actually, I want to kind of
Yeah.
shift convo, right?
Hmm.
When you look at kind of your career, right? And obviously this is called Financial Freestyle, so we got to freestyle a little bit, but obviously, you might be on retainer with certain clients, but I would imagine, right, you make a lot of money when you sign a big deal. And so let's talk about like how financial literacy has been important for you over the course of your career and maybe some mistakes you made and kind of, now kind of some advice you would give with people that are getting variable income as opposed to that paycheck every 2 weeks.
It starts off with the small things of like everyone tells you to run and get an LLC. I'm like, do I actually need one at first for the type of business that I have? Making sure that you having a proper accountant, taxes. So the first 3 years of my business was so difficult because I owed so much in taxes and I didn't understand. Like you think, okay, I get this $50,000 check. Oh my God, it's mine. No, how it's portioned out. I have to put this percentage for taxes, this for this, make sure, save towards this. This is what I'm paying myself from this. So relatively, I really came into it blind and in the dark. Love to my family, had the programs, we're all in the school programs, but nobody really prepared me for this. So the great thing was honestly, my accountant, Robin Boyd, has been so amazing in helping me throughout this like whole process and understanding my business, so it's just my portfolio and everything. So I just tell people if you're not super knowledgeable in that space, making sure that you get the help very early on. So I didn't rush to get like an assistant or publicist or anything like that. First person I hired was an accountant to help me with my business, to strategize, to have an understanding how to save, how to spend, and how to get more money.
You know why that's so important, and I love that you said it. That's the first person you get is because we're really reactive when it comes to paying taxes. Okay, the end of the year, how much I owe, as opposed to working with someone over the course of the year to actually strategize to one, lower, you know,
Yeah.
find different ways to, lower taxable income and find ways to try to
I mean,
offset
what I'm
this and
spending, what I
structure it.
should could be working on, and just all of the things and helping me in those spaces. So just you're never too old or too young to just bring in somebody who is knowledgeable in that space, who knows that space. So Robin Boyd is that for me. So she'll be like, hey, we have quarterly calls. So we do monthly calls, but we do quarterly calls for my taxes. Like this is what we need to do. We have this timeline and everything else, and make sure I get it done. Cause I don't ever want that. Like I remember getting like, oh, you owe this much, we're about to garnish. I'm like, oh, wait, I thought I paid, and not really knowing and getting Robin to figure it all out and get it there for me. But when you have all these different, you have W-2s coming in from all these places you necessarily don't know. And it's important for influencers now who are on these Snapchats and the TikToks who are making all these money, who's making all this money coming from different places. Make sure that you get that accountant or somebody who's there who's really doing your bookkeeping.
Yeah, it's important, right? People in
Yeah.
the creator economy, as well as now these young athletes with NILs,
Yeah.
right? They getting 1099s and they think, to your
Yeah.
point, it's all their money. Oh no, Uncle Sam
No.
needs some of that. But look, I'll be remiss if I'm sitting here, right, with one of the big bosses, right? One of the goats in the industry. I got to get some advice to the people that are listening, right? So if you could go back in time and talk to a younger, hungry 18-year-old Karen, what advice would you give her?
Um, I took myself out of the game. I wouldn't necessarily change anything, but the conversation I'd have with myself is probably holding my hand through a lot of the things that were very timid that I didn't even start because it's it's hard starting, but that process in the middle of like when you don't have success or failure just yet, that like just the unknown, that fear of unknown will just did something to me in a lot of areas in my personal work, family, and things. And I just wish I just wasn't timid and believed in myself. Um, I wish I believed in myself before I got the medal. So it's really just seeing that vision. It's just there. It's very hard because we look to our left and our right. And when I say that social media is very prominent now, we see people's success coming early. We see other people's races, we see other people's blueprint, and then we take our eyes off of what we're doing, going, okay, maybe I should do this, maybe I should implement this and start changing our core values. So for me, it's Karen, you should have never been timid in a lot of things. Continue to keep your core values and continue going. But I wouldn't change anything because all of those situations for me are lessons to who I am now as an individual. But 18-year-old me just needed to know, girl, If you fail or you don't, just do it.
I love it. And if you could
Yeah.
go back in time and think of a pivotal point in your career, just one thing that truly changed your overall career trajectory, what do you think that is?
Networking across that time, meeting Mac Main. Mac Main was really the facilitator because doing that was so important to me because now this is somebody that I wanted to work with as a business partner, you know? Like I came in, which was great. Now Mac is a business partner. Even when I got to work with Wayne, networking across got me that position where I went from his social media manager to his general manager for 4 years. So yeah, that networking across, man, that's just pivotal for me. Just knowing the importance of that. I don't want to just know, one high thing moment, but that networking across, I'm always going to push the importance of that.
I love that. And I'll say maybe
Yeah.
last question. What advice would you give to somebody that's trying to break into the agency world, into the marketing world, into the management world? Like what advice you giving to? It's a
So
lot.
we are
Maybe you could
now
say one.
Oh, we're now in a place where there's so much information that you can take in and so much resources. Now that it's readily available to you, make sure you take advantage of that. So, I know people get excited about like the chat GPTs and things, but those things can be there besides, oh, help me write an email. It can help you write a business plan. It can help you with ideas that you've had in your mind for a very long time. So please take advantage of all of the resources that are readily available to you without you having to leave your home, not having to pay incurities is super expensive and fees and things like that. Like you can literally start a business off of your telephone in less than 2 minutes. So take advantage of that. Utilize all of the free resources that the US has to offer.
I love it. This was a
Yeah.
remarkable episode full of big
Thank you.
gems. Thanks
Thank
for the
you.
inspiration. That's it for this episode. Once again, Karen, I want to thank you for joining us.
Thank
And to
you.
the people at home, make sure that you like, subscribe, hit that QR code at the bottom so you can look at a lot of the other shows we have on this network. But until next week, make sure you tune in to Financial Freestyle. I'm your host, Ross Mack.
This content was not intended to be financial advice and should not be used as a substitute for professional financial services.